Welcome back to another video. If you are new to my channel, my name is Holly, and on this channel I discuss narcissism, narcissistic abuse, abstinence, and from time to time I do deviate from the topics at hand and I discuss topics that are of interest to me. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing a very, very serious topic, and I'm going to be talking about familiar spirits. Familiar spirits are demonic enemies that you cannot see. It is an energy. It is an energy. You cannot see these demonic enemies, but they will come into your life and you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know. This is the reason why you can go from one relationship to the next and it's a different person, different face, same behavior, same drama. They got that same narcissistic spirit. They got that same spirit of jealousy. They got that same provoking spirit. They got that same controlling spirit as your ex. My children's father and even my ex after him, like that my ex who discarded me over 5 years ago, they both were familiar spirits. Well, I didn't know that my children's father, not my narcissistic ex who discarded me 5 years ago, but my children's father, who was unfortunately deceased. At the time, I was vulnerable, and looking back, he was preying on me. I was 19 years old when we met, 20, and he was preying on me. He was a narcissist, and he was a demonic enemy, and a familiar spirit. That's what a familiar spirit is. They are unseen demonic enemies that come into your life, control, dominate, abuse, wreak havoc in your life. They come into your life to destroy you. And this is the reason why you have to be careful who you allow in your life. The only way to, these familiar spirits, they attach themselves to certain areas of your life. For example, these familiar spirits were attaching themselves to, my romantic life. Anytime I would allow a man in my life, he would be a familiar spirit. He would behave in very similar ways as the man before that. I haven't been in too many relationships, been in very few relationships, but the situationships that I have been in, they were all narcissists. They all had that spirit of that controlling spirit. They all had that jealousy spirit. They were all narcissists. And so the only way to basically destroy these demons and break through, you have to heal. You have to heal. If you haven't healed, you're gonna continue to attract these familiar spirits. And that's the reason why, now that I've healed, I noticed that these familiar spirits, they don't, approach. They'll stare, they'll glare at me, but they don't approach. Well, some men who have a familiar spirit, that I feel like I'm familiar with their energy, it's the energy that they give off. And that's the reason why you're familiar with it, because someone in your past that you were involved with, an ex, they had that same spirit. You cannot see that demon in them. Well, you can't see that demon in that person. You can pick up on their spirit. For example, last night I was out and about, and there were two black men that had a familiar spirit. They were giving off an energy that I was familiar with. They had that same spirit of jealousy, I was just on my cell phone. One of them, I was just on my cell phone and I happened to look up and he was glaring at me. There are a lot of, that was a familiar spirit. He had the spirit of jealousy and he could not stand it. He was triggered by me just being on my cell phone. Like, who was she texting? Who was this beautiful woman texting? And I bet you he's got a controlling spirit. I bet you he has the spirit of jealousy. There are a lot of men out here who are jealous, and it'd be a complete stranger, or a beautiful woman, a complete stranger on her cell phone, and he sees her on her phone, and that jealousy within him gets triggered. That controlling spirit gets triggered. My children's father had that same jealous, controlling spirit. You know, is that the phone you texting your new boyfriend on? And he snatched it out of my hand and it blew up into a whole criminal case, which was thrown out because he manipulated it. I've already discussed that in a video weeks ago. But yeah, even with YouTube comments, when I get hate comments or, you know, trolled on YouTube, those are also familiar spirits to me. To me, those are familiar spirits because my children's father, you know, before he passed away, he would harass me via text message. He would bully me. He would provoke me through text messaging. He would text me things that would aggravate me. And so anytime I get a hate comment or any kind of negative comment on YouTube, like I read the first two, I don't even read the whole thing. Sometimes, well, I'm not even going to say that. I just read the first two words. Like I got a hate comment. There was a familiar spirit who left a hate comment. I read the first two words and I just blocked it. I blocked them. They didn't even have, a lot of these familiar spirits that be leaving, these people that be leaving hate comments, they don't even have a profile picture. So it's more obvious that they are a familiar spirit. So anytime I get hate comments, I just block because I know that those are familiar spirits that I've dealt with in the past. And I don't want them being able to freely have access to, you know, my energy, have access to comment on my YouTube channel. So I just block them and keep it moving. Those are familiar spirits. So yes, familiar spirits are attached to people. They are attached to drama. They run in bloodlines. They run in families. That's the reason why you got to be careful who you have children with too, who you have sex with. Abstinence until marriage, because you have a baby by a man and you establish paternity, which I don't recommend if a man ain't married you to establish paternity. I did a video about that. You are going to basically, you're basically going to be locked into that bloodline, his family, and you're going to have to deal with them. But yeah, familiar spirits are energies that you are familiar with. You've dealt with in the past. You have dealt with in the past, and you are familiar with that energy because you were involved in a relationship with someone who had that same narcissistic spirit, that same demonic spirit. Familiar spirits are demonic spirits. They are enemies. And it's almost like being possessed. You know, familiar spirits keep coming into your life. You know, your ex who had that same narcissistic spirit, you keep attracting that same narcissistic spirit, that same demonic, you know, narcissism, the spirit of narcissism, that's a demonic spirit. And you have to heal to break through. You will, once you heal, you will notice a change, and the kind of men you attract, you will notice a change. And the men who are operating in that same spirit as, you know, men that you were involved with in the past, men who have that same demonic spirit, you will notice that they will glare at you, they will stare, but they will never approach. Men who have familiar spirits that I'm familiar with, I notice most of them, they just stare at me. For example, last night I was out and about and there were two black men that were staring at me. They were glaring at me. One of them I triggered because I triggered that spirit of jealousy in him because I was on my phone. And, it's like, this beautiful woman on her phone, who was she texting? Who was her man? And so the other black guy was glaring at me too, jealousy. They both had that same, I could feel that energy. I could feel their spirit. I could feel that spirit of jealousy. I could feel that controlling spirit. I could feel that narcissistic spirit. So yes, you have to heal. If you do not want to keep attracting these familiar spirits, you have to heal. You have to sharpen your spirit of discernment so that you are able to discern that energy. You have to sharpen your intuition so that you can discern that energy, and you have to heal. When you're unhealed, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. You have to, work on your self-esteem and your self-worth. If not, these familiar spirits, it's like an open door. They even say that open doors are familiar spirits. If you go out here, engaging in fornication and just committing sins, it leaves the door open it makes you vulnerable to familiar spirits. So you have to heal yourself. You have to heal yourself. You have to have a strong relationship with God. Otherwise, you're going to keep attracting, familiar spirits will always be attracted to you, but they won't approach you. Because you have healed, you have done the work. You're no longer vulnerable. So there's no way that they can try to come into your life. You're healed. You're protected. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that you found this video informative, and I will see you in my next upload.